Check, check, check.
You should be good. You just need to unmute it there. Muted. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can get your attention, we're going to start in about 5 minutes. If you have not yet signed the Declaration of Church Membership, you need to in order to have your vote counted. We have sheets set up on the music stands at the back of the sanctuary. Again, if you haven't signed that yet, you need to have your vote counted. There are also materials printed at the back. They were circulated by email, but if you want to get a hard copy, they are at the back as well. We'll start in about 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this meeting to order. We'll begin with a prayer. The Lord be with you. O Lord God, the Father of lights and the fountain of all wisdom, who hast promised through thy Son, Jesus Christ, to be with thy church to the end of the world. We humbly beseech thee with thy favor to behold us thy servants, who are now assembled in thy name, to take counsel together for this parish. Mercifully grant that thy Holy Spirit may rest upon us, enlighten and guide us, that all our consultations may be prospered to the advancement of thy honor and glory and the welfare of thy church. Through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. We'll call upon Lowell Friesen to lead this hymn. Please be seated. It's my pleasure to appoint Clint Curl to be the chair of this meeting and Mackenzie Taylor to be the secretary.
Well, thank you very much, Bonnie, and good afternoon to everyone. I'm very pleased to be your chair for our annual general meeting. I have a few announcements before we get going. First off, let's begin with a land acknowledgement. The parish of St. Margaret's lies in Treaty 1 territory, which we recognize as the Métis homeland and the ancestral lands of the Anishinaabe, the Cree, and the Dakota. Now, by way of introduction, there are but three things that we're going to do in this meeting today. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to appoint officers. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to receive reports from 2025 and how the church year went. And the last and final thing we're going to do is we're going to approve a budget for the current year. So if we can do those three minimum things, that is a successful AGM. Anything else is cream on top. Here's an announcement. I mentioned this before we started. There is a declaration of church membership that everyone needs to sign if you want to vote at the elections that we're going to have momentarily. You need to be a regular attender of St. Margaret's. That means you've attended twice in the past year. You have to be over 16 years of age. Good. Here's another announcement. We do have some folks who may be joining us by remote. We warmly welcome you. This year, we do not have a mechanism to take questions or register votes from those members who are attending by remote. A gentle reminder, when you speak from the floor, first of all, we have a microphone set up in the center aisle in the back. Please do use the microphone. That will especially be appreciated by the folks joining by remote. Also, we would love it if you could just identify yourself by your first and last name when you speak. It makes the job of our secretary so much easier if you can do that. Okay. The last introductory announcement. It is good form to begin a business meeting with a joke. Okay. During the Gulf War in Iraq, this may be a true story. During the Gulf War in Iraq, an aide entered the Oval Office and brought the weekly casualty report of the coalition forces to President Bush. Mr. President, this week we lost 2 Brazilian soldiers. The president went pale. He put his head in his hands and he began to weep unconsolably. The aide had never seen the president react like this before. So he asked, "Mr. President, is there anything I can do?" And the president replied, "Just remind me, how many is a Brazilian?" All right, on to business. The first item is to approve the agenda. A written agenda of the annual general meeting is included in your package. I would welcome a motion to accept the agenda as circulated. Dorothy Young, is there a second? Larry Reynolds has seconded it. Are there any proposed changes now that we have the motion on the floor? Any proposed changes to the agenda? Going once, going twice. Okay, seeing no proposed changes. All in favor of accepting the agenda as circulated, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Okay, carried. We have an agenda. Call for new business. Any items of new business, so it's items that are not reflected in our agenda as approved, need to be written out on paper and passed to me, the chair, at the break. Pending my review as chair, we'll deal with any such matters of new business toward the tail end of our meeting today. Okay. Let's deal with the minutes of past meeting. They are included in your package. They've been circulated also by email. Are there any errors or omissions in last year's AGM minutes? Yes.
Hello, Jack Oshway. I just wanted to request that, not necessarily an omission, but in the budget section, a large part of this meeting, as we all know, is devoted to the committee members of the budget explaining the budget, and that entire presentation only received 1 sentence in last year's minutes. And so I have no issue with that, but because it's on, we can watch it all again on YouTube if we want. But maybe this year we could add a little synopsis of each committee member's presentation. Just that's for consideration. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So that is not exactly a desire to change last year's minutes, but rather a recommendation for this year's minutes to add a little bit more detail on the budget. Thank you. We'll take that under advisement, and the secretary will take note. Are there any other errors or omissions from last year's minutes? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Can I get a motion to approve the 2025 minutes as distributed? Larry Reynolds, second. Dorothy Young. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Carried. All right. The minutes from last year's AGM are approved. Is there any business arising from the minutes of last year? As chair, I do note one item. That last year there was a request for vestry to consider making the one-time gift to St. Thomas Weston an annual commitment. That was in the minutes. And I believe, Bonnie, I'm looking to you that we'll deal with that question in the discussion of the 2026 budget?
Yep.
Very good. Okay. Any other business arising from the minutes last year? Going once, going twice, not seeing any, we will move on. I will now pass the microphone on to Rector Bonnie for opening remarks.
A couple days ago, a parishioner here told me this story. They told me that they were downtown meeting a colleague, and they bumped into someone else from the congregation. And after a second of, wait, how do I know you, as I think is a familiar experience, they figured it out. Yes, St. Margaret's, of course. What is St. Margaret's, this colleague asked. Is it a community center or something? No, it's a church, our parishioner responded. Oh, interesting. Where is this church, their colleague asks. Our parishioner explains, it's at the corner of Westminster and Ethelbert in Wolseley. Oh, I know that place, their colleague says. There is a farmer's market there. Once, I was at the farmer's market, and I noticed that the church doors were open, so I went in and sat in the pews, and I had an incredibly peaceful experience. It was wonderful. I just sat there for half an hour. Now, that's just the last story that someone told me. Of late, I've heard many very similar stories. I've heard about other market goers who have come in to sit in the pews and discovered the joy of listening to an organist practice their craft. I've heard about neighbors who have marked their calendars for the Saturday in December when the church is open, when musicians come and go and create a space for people to escape the rush and crush of time for an afternoon. I've heard about parents of school children who let their kids wander around between the pews a little bit, watch them inspect the strangeness of this place, and discover the beauty of the light on the wood. I hear from time to time stories about people who are just brought here, who just wander in the middle of the week, in the middle of the afternoon, and they don't know why, but are surprised to discover that the doors are unlocked, and a woman named Marion is peacefully sitting here saying her evening prayers. All of these stories tell us something about an essential part of the vocation of the church: to host one another, to host the world. The parish church does not exist primarily for the benefit of those who come to worship here Sunday by Sunday. As the then Archbishop of Canterbury, William Temple, wrote in a letter to a theologian friend, quote, "The church exists primarily for the sake of those who are still outside it," end quote. That is, we exist for everyone else, for everyone who lives in our parish bounds, between Raglan Road and Sherbrooke Street, between Portage Avenue and the Assiniboine River. We exist for the Jewish family and the Muslim family and the committed atheist and the haunted agnostic, for the young and the old, the poor and the rich, the conservative and the radical. We are here should any of them need us, come looking for us, or call upon us. We are here to host them, to host the world. Contrary to appearances, the church is bigger than the world. It is more capacious, as Clint Curl helpfully put it in a meeting a few months ago, and it has real gifts to give. Former Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, who held the office 50 years after Temple, put it this way in an interview just last year: "The church is a community that exists because of the invitation, the call of God. It is a people that knows itself always as guest, as invited guest. And even more, it is a people who have discovered that in responding to that summons, to that invitation, we are given the gift to extend it to one another." At that level, to be a church is not to have a constitution you can sign on to. It's not about having a comfortable or comforting subculture. It's, to quote Williams, to speak to the world about a possibility of life in relation to God and one another, which looks beyond rivalry, retaliation, exclusion, and all the rest of it, end quote. That is, to be a church is to be a community that is capacious and clear about the gifts it has to give. The author and social commentator Priya Parker, author of The Art of Gathering, How We Meet and Why It Matters, recently gave an interview with the New York Times opinion columnist Ezra Klein, and made the case that not only is gathering together an essential need for human beings, and not just because it's nice, because it's the answer to the problem of loneliness, but also because, as Hannah Arendt argues in The End of the Origins of Totalitarianism, gathering together is the way we create solidarity that enables us to act in and on the world as collectives, as communities, which is the only defense against the isolation that totalitarian powers feed upon and create. But gathering requires hosts, Parker argues. And the gracious host is the one who has something specific, different, and defined to offer. Her term is a disputable purpose that is at the heart of what any given gathering is about. This is the kind of host that the church is, capacious and clear. We are here to host the world in all its diversity, whenever and however it comes, to the supper of the Lamb. This is why we have work before us today. Today we need to pass a budget that allows us to host the whole parish, to host the neighborhood, to host the world. A budget that allows us to keep the lights on. A budget that gives musicians and choristers the opportunity to prepare repertoire that communicates the beauty of the gospel in another transcendent register. A budget that allows us to train and develop a new generation of Christian leaders who will drive us to look for those who are looking for us in ways we had not previously seen or thought, in ways that we could not have seen without them. A budget that feeds young people. A budget that helps to feed a community that is feeding a community. A budget that allows a staff missioner team to work as hard as they can, to dream as much as they can, to grow wherever they can. A budget that will enable us to host the world here in this place, however it comes through the doors. A budget that will free us to extend the invitation to the simple, lovely feast that we keep at our Lord's table. By way of conclusion, I'd like to end with a slightly different thought, which I realize is bad rhetoric policy, but I have often wondered from time to time if in my service here in ordained ministry, if I won't be called on to witness this community, this parish, descend into some of its darkest days. I wonder from time to time, when I look at these two crosses, what it was that Reverend Woods said to this community as it turned over so many of its young men to a horrifying war. Or what it was that Canon Glover said when they had to do it again. I wonder sometimes if I will have to learn what it is that a parish priest is supposed to say to a community in the grips of some horrifying struggle, with all its consequent fear, sorrow, and doubt. I pray that I will not. But I suspect that what it was that Reverend Woods and Canon Glover said in all those times was the same thing as they said in all the other times. The same thing that Jim Slater and David Whitcomb said. We are still here to host the world, to provide a place of refuge, to be an enclave of the kingdom of peace. I imagine, should our little beloved neighborhood once again have to face very dark days, that this parish church will decide there is nothing to do but to do as she did on this day, at this meeting, to prepare herself to invite the world to receive the gifts that she has been given to give. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. We now turn to offices of the church. And this is the part of the meeting where we either appoint or elect officers and invest them with authority to make decisions and to represent us locally and even at the diocesan level. In our church tradition, in the Anglican Church of Canada, some of the offices are appointed and some of them are elected. We do both. So we're going to deal with the appointments first. So we have rector's warden. Well, what's a rector's warden? It's a senior lay person appointed by the rector to serve as her primary advisor, partner, and representative on the parish corporation. There's also a deputy rector's warden to assist the rector's warden in their duties and to step in if the rector's warden's unavailable. Also appointed is the envelope secretary. They're responsible for managing the parish's confidential donation system. And then we have the treasurer, who works with the rector and the wardens to track and manage congregational funds. So, I now look to the nominations chair to present the appointments for 2026. Stephen Kraimusa, the floor is yours.
Would we like them to stand up?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just going to read out the nomination or the appointments. For Rector's Warden, the appointment is Will Rue. Appointed as Deputy Rector's Warden is Ali Vidal. Appointed as Envelope Secretary is Kristen McLean. And Treasurer is Stu Taylor. If he is here. There he is.
All right, the parish recognizes these appointments, and with thanks to Will and Ali and Kristen and Stu for their tireless service both to us and to Christ. Pursuant to Canon 21 of the Diocese of Rupert's Linde, I would entertain a motion that the deputy wardens be ex officio members of vestry. Would someone like to make that motion? Yes. Okay, we've got. Is there a second? All right, thank you, Bill. Good. Bill McCann. Yeah. Okay. I don't think there'd be debate on this kind of motion. Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Carried. Okay, we now come on the agenda to the elected offices of the church. So before we actually get to that, we need to create some infrastructure for democracy. So the first thing I want to do is we need to create scrutineers. So that's people who are going to take the votes honestly and count them accurately. I would welcome a motion from the floor to appoint Barbara Andes and Alan McFadden to act as our scrutineers today.
It's Andres.
Oh, Andres, sorry. Yeah. Barbara Andres and Alan McFadden. Larry's making that motion. Is there a second? Yes, got a second over there. Johanna Hanford. All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried. Okay, now we need to think about protecting the privacy of the members after the election so that people can vote according to their consciences without fear of reprisal, which is a livid fear in St. Margaret's. So we want a motion that the results of the election of deputy wardens, vestry, and synod delegates be destroyed following the conclusion of the meeting. Would anyone like to make that motion? Okay, yes, we have a motion there. And second, right, Dorothy's making a second. All in favor of destroying the ballots after the election, please raise your hand. All opposed? Carried.
Will it be white, silver, black?
Okay, now we need to know who we're going to be voting for. So here's how this works. We do have a nominating committee. The nominating committee thinks and prays through the year about the people they would like to put forward. They talk to the people, get their consent for various offices. And we do have a nominating committee, and they're going to tell us who they're thinking about. We also have the capacity to make nominations from the floor. So there'll be time to do that if you wish. So we'll deal first with the People's Warden and Deputy People's Warden. So People's Warden, they represent the congregation in the governance of the parish, and together with the Rector's Warden and the Rector, that forms the corporation of the church. And so they're legally responsible for the church. It's a very important role. And then we have a Deputy People's Warden who assists the People's Warden and steps in if the People's Warden is unavailable. I'm going to ask the nominating committee representative to present the nominations for People's Warden and Deputy People's Warden. Harold, you have the floor.
Back here, if it's all right. So I'd like to nominate Stephen Camusa and Kelly Milne as People's Warden and Deputy People's Warden, respectively. They told me I could give a speech extolling their virtues, but I won't, actually. I think people know them, but those are my two nominations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harold. There is a brief write-up in the agenda there on those two wonderful people. So we have one nomination for People's Warden and one nomination for the Deputy. I'd like to open the floor to see if there are any further nominations for either of those two offices, People's Warden or Deputy's People's Warden. So going once, any nominations from the floor? Going twice? Going 3 times? Okay. Seeing no nominations from the floor, nominations are closed, and by acclamation, I hereby declare that Stephen Camusa be appointed People's Warden and Kelly Milne as Deputy People's Warden for 2026. We come now to the voting for the vestry. So vestry is what we call our parish council. I mean, in other traditions, you might call it a church board. They're responsible to work with Bonnie, the rector, toward the good governance and ministry direction of our church. We need to have at least 4 people on vestry and no more than 20. So that's our scope. Now, some members of vestry are ex officio. So they don't appear on the nomination list, and these ex officio members include ordained clergy such as Tony Harwood-Jones and Linda Parsons, and deacons Paul Dick and Eric Parsons and Elaine Pinto. And so while we will not directly elect those folks, they are ex officio. We want to pause and acknowledge their importance and their value to our parish. Stephen, will the nominating committee chair kindly present the nominations for vestry?
Question, Mr. Chair. Could the candidates stand so we can all see who they are when they're nominated?
That's a great suggestion. Thank you. We'll do that. Thank you, Eric.
I'm Eric Parsons, and I'm from St. Mary's.
Go ahead, Stephen.
Okay. The nominations for vestry are Chris Banman, Harold Dick, Nathan Dewick, Joanne Epp, Odanis Fast, Pam Friesen, Johanna Hanford, Shelley Mall, Jana Neufeld, David Newsom, Caleb Olfert, Cole Oshway, Fred Pauls, Dolores Chart, Larry Reynolds, and Ryan Mead.
Okay, very good. No, I lost count. How many are we at there?
16.
Yeah.
16. So we can have up to 20. Good. Okay, thank you for that. We have those nominations. Are there any other nominations for vestry from the floor? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, nominations are now closed. We have a slate of 16. We are allowed up to 20. So what I want to do is by acclaim, right? I don't think, yeah, okay. So do we need a motion for this? I think not, right? No, we don't need a motion for this. We have under 20. So it is my pleasure to declare that the slate of nominees, as presented by the nominating committee, are elected by acclamation as members of vestry for 2026. Thank you to all. Right. Come now to the election of synod delegates. So these people are going to be representing us at regional and national level meetings, potentially, of the Anglican Church to vote on policies and canons, those are church laws, and church direction and strategy at those levels. We need 4 delegates to synod and 4 alternate delegates, so 8 people in total. Will the nominating chair please present the list of nominees for synod?
And I'll get these people to stand too if they're here. The nominees for synod are...
May I ask that the people remain standing so those of us in the front can rotate our heads and actually see them?
Okay, so the request was that you have to stay standing. You can't just stand and sit down. I think that's a great suggestion. Thank you.
Okay. So the nominees for synod delegates are Chris Banman, Tracy Curl, Pam Friesen, Colton Koval. Okay. Colton is downstairs. Shelley Mall, Jana Neufeld, David Newsom, and Nathan Rempel.
Great, thank you. So that counted 8 to me. Okay. Are there any further nominations from the floor for synod delegates? Going once, going twice. Right? Nominations are now closed. We now need to go with this one to balloting, right? Where are my scrutineers? Okay, and we will need the ballots. Graham, are they at the back? Okay, we have ballots to hand out. So again, we're entitled to 4 lay synod delegates and 4 alternates. The 4 people with the greatest number of votes are going to act as our synod delegates. The next 4 people in ascending order will be our alternates if those delegates are unable to attend. To vote for somebody, put an X in front of their name. It's easy as that. Now, I should say it is not compulsory to vote for 4 names. You could vote for 3 or 2 or 1, it's up to you. And once we are done voting, we will collect those ballots and we'll announce the results of the election toward the end of our meeting today. Did you want to wait or do you want to go special thanks? Or? I can do that. You want to go to special thanks? Well, I think keep it moving, right? Sure. Are you comfortable doing that? Oh, totally. While we're in the process of balloting, just to keep the meeting moving along, I'd like to basically invite Bonnie and Graham, if he's available, to take the floor for an expression of thanks.
I want to thank the outgoing synod delegates, even though some of them may be re-elected at this meeting. They are Pam Friesen, Tracy Curl, David Newsom, and Paul Dick. They all attended the electoral synod held in the spring in which we elected our new bishop. They brought their gifts of wisdom and insight and passion to that process, and we're very grateful that they have served in this way. I also want to thank our outgoing vestry members. Zarish Aftab is leaving vestry, though she wasn't able to make it to many meetings. John Brubaker, who with his wife Rhonda has moved to Ontario, and we will miss them both very much. And last but not least, Amy Knight, who has served the full term limit as a vestry member and given her gifts of wisdom and thoughtful faithfulness for the last 6 years. So now we will let her have a break, a much-deserved break, with our deep gratitude, but also with our hope that she will return to serve in this way in the future. Would you please join me in thanking them all?
Thank you very much, Bonnie, and thanks to all who contributed in that way. So we are now, as we continue to do balloting, we will proceed with the agenda. We're now coming to the topic of the introduction of the budget. So I'll be looking to Caleb Olfert and the Budget Committee, those who are representing, to be coming forward and setting up now. The way we'll do this is we're going to present the budget, but we're not going to vote on the budget until after the break. So we're going to have a budget presentation. We will entertain questions for clarity or questions seeking understanding. That's perfectly fine. But I ask that if you have any motions for amendment, that you just hold on to those until after the vote comes after the break. Is that understood? Very good. And the reason for that is it gives us time to digest the budget. It's a very important decision, and even to talk to friends during the break and get our thoughts together. So with that, I'll pass the floor over to Caleb for an introduction to our proposed 2026 budget. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. My name is Caleb, and I'm the chair of this year's budget committee. Almost everyone in this committee has been on the committee in previous years. So we had a whole group of budgeting veterans, and it was a very efficient and effective team, so it was great to work with them. We had Johanna Hanford, Chris Bandman. Can you hear me okay? There we go. Thank you. We had Johanna Hanford, Chris Bandman, Graham McFarlane, Bonnie Dowling, Tracy Curl, Stephen Carmusa, and Heather Epp. So a little anecdote about the budgeting process and the team. If you're wondering, like, what's the vibe of the budget committee? Like, it sounds like so much fun. What's it like to be in there? So leading up to the AGM, we have a handful of different meetings. Some of them are here at the church in person. Some of them are on Zoom. We all tune in virtually. And one of our last ones was a virtual meeting, so I'm doing it in my home office. And we meet for an hour, and I come out, and Holly comes and looks at me, my wife, and she says, "What was going on in there? You guys were laughing the entire time." Budget committee is a good time, okay? Despite the prejudice you may have when you hear budget committee, like, that's my pitch for future years if you want to get involved. Okay, so I'm a minute in and already off script, so I'll get back to my notes here. Anyways, thank you to everyone who worked on this year. So before going into the details of the budget, the AGM kind of presents us with a good time to remind ourselves of how the financial year works here at St. Margaret's. So church finances here is kind of like a relay race, with different groups passing the baton along throughout the year. The three runners in our race are the Stewardship Committee, the Budget Committee, that's us, and then last is the Finance Committee. So first, during the Consecration Sunday service in October, the Stewardship Committee calls the congregation to ask itself and one another, what is God calling you to give? Together, we fill out our estimates of giving, we bring them up to the front of the church, and then we share a meal together afterwards downstairs. These cards are then taken by the Stewardship Committee to form an overall estimate of giving for the coming year. Next in the race comes the Budgeting Committee, whose goal is to create a budget that allows each ministry area to grow in line with the identity, mission, and vision of the church that you see printed in the AGM booklets. The Budget Committee shapes and allocates money to various ministry areas while working with each leader to help them articulate their vision and help them to answer the question, what is God calling this church to do? After the budget is passed at the AGM, which is what we're looking to do today, the Budget Committee then dissolves, and it becomes the responsibility of the Finance Committee to manage and oversee the finances throughout the rest of the year. So these three committees working together in sequence, stewardship, budget, and finance, listen, plan, and manage the money that's given to the church each year. To channel some of Graham's sermon series on money leading up to Consecration Sunday, the principle that governs this parish's budgetary decisions is the primacy of discernment. We don't go about making plans as a budget committee and then afterwards try to figure out how to fundraise to make those things happen. That is not what we are doing here. Rather, on Consecration Sunday, we each take it upon ourselves as members of the community to discern how much we expect to give in the coming year. Then the budget committee comes, takes that discerned estimate as a whole, and that is what governs the spending of the parish. The primacy of discernment is how we aim to operate here. Do you mind hitting the next slide for me? Okay, so now I'll go quickly over the estimate of giving for 2026. So on here you see the last couple of years, 2024 up to this year, 2026. And the estimate of giving is also printed in your AGM booklets, but it's made up of a few different numbers. So the first here is pledges from Consecration Sunday. That's essentially the sum of all the cards that we receive on Consecration Sunday. The next one here is previous year's giving. So in the case that someone is signed up for automatic deposits or regular giving through their bank, but they may not have been here on that day in October to fill out a card, we assume that they're continuing with the same amount of giving next year. And then the last down here is this estimate of additional income. So that includes offering that's collected by the collection plate, as well as some other grants that we receive throughout the year, and last, rental income that we get from the Montessori school. So I'll leave this up for a little bit of time right before Graham comes up, but there are a couple of highlights I want to point out here. One is that the total number of people, where is this line right here, between 2025 and 2013 that are included in our estimate, so that could be individuals or households, has gone up from 196 to 213, and that the total estimate of income for 2026 is just shy of $674,000, which is an increase of about 4% just over that compared to last year. So now Graham's going to speak a little bit about the context and kind of what's been happening the years leading up to this.
Okay, so my slide is the last 6 years. So these, okay, this is, I didn't want to give you too many numbers, okay? But what these numbers represent is how much we spent over and above what we had spent the previous year, okay? So this is not budget, it's actual, what we actually spent in a year. In 2020, we spent $24,000 more than we had spent in 2019. And then in 2021, we spent $24,000 less than we had spent in 2020. And so then what you see on the right-hand side then is the percentage of growth of what we actually spent year on year. And they're like, what's the pattern? I don't know. You tell me. It's hard to say. There's a pandemic in the meantime. And so we actually spent 8% more in 2024 than we had in 2023. And I meant to say, that we don't run significant deficits. So what we actually spent in a year is a very good proxy for what we brought in the year. And that tends to be a little bit more than what was actually budgeted. So for the past 3 years, we have spent $12,000 to $15,000 more in the year than we had budgeted, because the budget is based on the estimate of giving, but we spend the money that comes in. If it comes in, we spend it, whether we had budgeted for it or not. So actual giving had gone up quite significantly over the past 2 years compared to the previous years. This year, the budget is 2.9% greater than what we actually spent in 2025. So what we are sort of banking on is quite a modest increase compared to the actual increases that we've had over the last few years. So basically what I'm telling you is that it's quite a conservative budget. And again, the principle is that we believe the estimate of giving. You say what you're going to give, and then you as a I'm not saying you should, I'm just saying you do as a congregation, you tend to under-promise and then over-deliver a little bit. And so you tend to give us one number, and then you meet that number, and then you tend to give a little bit more than that, and then we spend a little bit more than that. So I think that's actually basically all I wanted to say about this number. It does, on the face of it, look like a big number, but I feel fairly confident that this congregation will meet this number. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Getting reprimanded by Graham for giving more than you said you would. I didn't think I was expecting that. Okay, so yeah. So transitioning to the budget now, the challenge of each year's committee is to think through how we take this somewhat lofty language of the vision, mission, and values, and how do we turn that into tangible ministry for where the parish is today. And kind of what Graham just showed and what we've seen in the estimates of giving over the last couple of years is the budget that we're proposing is really like trying to keep up with the growth that we have seen over that time period. So now we're going to go through each of the different line items within the budget, and you'll hear from different members of our committee on some of those details. So Heather, you want to go next?
Hi, I'm Heather Epp. As part of the Budget Committee, I had the opportunity to meet with Don Betts. Don is the head of 2 ministry lines in our budget, so I'll share what his vision is for each of those ministries this year. The first is Adult Christian Formation. Adult Christian Formation consists of small groups, hosting lectures, purchasing books, meeting for meals. These are just a few of the types of expenses that you would expect to see in this area of ministry. One specific area within Adult Christian Formation that is experiencing more growth is ministry to and by young adults. We are seeing more young adults looking for connections through the church and looking for ways to grow spiritually. A new focus this year in our budget is to provide the means for this group of people to meet on a regular basis. Adult Christian Formation is a vital part of the spiritual development for all adults at St. Margaret's. We hope to stay the course in the areas we've directed funds toward in the past, while also focusing on a new growing group of young people. The second ministry that Don looks after is community development, so I'm going to skip down a little bit. The official slogan of this ministry area is, and I'm quoting Don here, "We're back, baby." When COVID hit, this ministry area was forced to take a long break. Since the time that we have been allowed to meet again, the St. Margaret's community has shown how important meeting together is. We are a church and community that love to hang out with each other, and one way this happens is through our community development ministry. This means that we need to devote part of our budget to making this happen. There are many events throughout the year that would come from this part of the budget. The ball, the pancake supper, and Consecration Sunday are just to name a few. Spending time with each other is a valued part of this church's life, and we look forward to seeing the fruits of this ministry in the coming year.
I'm here to speak about pastoral care, the second line item. So the 2026 pastoral care budget is very similar to last year with just a slight increase. The budget facilitates the sharing of God's love and compassion. Presence, attentive listening, meeting of practical needs, and more are offered through meals, visits, prayer, phone calls, gifts, and going for coffee. And this is often directly through our staff, Holly Gosen and Kurt Armstrong, as well as through the many caring volunteers. There are so many opportunities for prayer here at St. Margaret's, and these prayer ministries are hosted by and led and participated by with many volunteers. This year's proposed budget, it again also includes Christmas hampers for families we've sponsored as refugees, as well as other friends of the parish. And there's also a look towards the future, towards expanding pastoral care volunteers included in this line. Having a pastoral care budget creates capacity for our parish to respond to the needs of those reaching out to our church from outside the walls, often a message left on the answering machine or an email to the office, and this gives us that wiggle room to be able to respond. While the numbers look the same, the big change for this year will be our staffing, as our pastoral care coordinator, Holly, goes on maternity leave after Holy Week for the rest of the year. While we will miss her gentle, caring presence and encouragement, we are so happy for her and Caleb, the 2026 budget provides for continued staffing for pastoral care during Holly's maternity leave, and we look forward to all that God has in store.
It was once again my pleasure to look over the worship budget for this year. You may remember last year we added, like what Bonnie alluded to, like the organ intern, and we at Lowell's request we increased the coffee budget because we have so many people singing and they need to like drink coffee. So we did that and we maintained that, and then this year we did a bit more of a deep dive and we added the Chancel Guild, and there were some certain questions like how much do we spend on silver polish, and like things you've never thought of, like tapered candles and wreaths outside, and the list goes on. It's like all these things, and so we started to delve into like what all encompasses the Chancel Guild budget, because we hadn't previously done that. And in that communication, I got a real gem of an email from Ryan Stace, and I'll read it. Thank you for the previous email, which contained some touching words about what we do for the Chancel Guild and St. Margaret's, and why. I appreciate your few lines about the hidden gifts captured the subtle choices we all make when it comes to giving in the life of the parish, both in our time and material resources. It struck me that in my 15 years of making bread for St. Margaret's, I have, consciously or not, somewhat resisted quantifying the costs. The reason is that it likely hinges on the historical relationship between Tallgrass Prairie and the parish. Here is my understanding. At some point in the late 80s, some folks in the Wolseley community, centered around the House of Church Grain of Wheat, approached then Rector Jim Slater about making bread in the church basement, which was apparently underused at the time. They wanted to start a bread co-op and did so for a while out of St. Margaret's, distributing loaves around the neighborhood by children pulling wagons. This bread co-op became Tallgrass Prairie in 1990, when they started making an old storefront just down, baking, an old storefront just down Westminster, where it bakes today. After this, as per the story I was told, Tallgrass has made communion bread for St. Margaret's. They did this first in honor of their beginnings there, their mutual understanding of the vitality of bread in both settings, and their shared connection of Christian fellowship that characterized the bakery at the time. Whether this had been continuous until 2011 when I started attending St. Margaret's, I'm not sure, but this is part of the story where I come in. I had already been working at the bakery for a number of years at that point, and one day Tabitha, one of the owners, approached me and said, because she knew I started attending St. Margaret's, it was before I was even baptized, she was going to show me how to make communion bread, and I was going to make it from then on. Tabitha is kind of like Kirsten, the type of person who often designates others to take on important tasks and gets her way just as often. Thus, from then on, I made the bread and continue to do so. I'm not really sure if this was meant as a perpetual gift from the bakery to the church, but when I started doing it, and through me, I sort of made it into that. Mostly this bread baking has just been done in peace and quiet, and due to this, I haven't thought much about how much it costs in raw materials to me or the bakery, as many of the material costs have been shared. I have now made the bread in all three locations, Tallgrass, Wolseley, the Forks, and St. Boniface, as well as my own home, which has meant many things for me over the last 15 years. At times when I've been away or out of the country, others at St. Margaret's or Tallgrass have filled in. Most recently, in the past few years, I have the amazing privilege of working more closely with the rest of the Chancel Guild team, who have cared for a good system of setting up the Eucharist that has an eye to bread freshness and keeps everything well organized, which is to say there are enough willing supports, both material and personal, and I would argue spiritual, in a place for this project to continue without a budget line. As long as I am involved. I spend a significant part of my time at the bakery thinking about how much things cost. I told you I was going to cry. But we do it because we have to. It's nice to know that there are areas in my baking life where I do not have to do that. And maybe it's just a good thing. I know I enjoy it.
Hello, I'm Johanna. I spend most of the year sitting in the choir, and as a confession, I will say that there are times when I look over the congregation and I see the heads. Sometimes they're bent. And there are heads there from the new little wispy bald people to the luxurious and lengthy hair of our teenagers and the starting to gray older folks, and then the whiteheads like me and some of you, and the return to the wispy bald. But anyway, sort of those of you who think of the 7 Ages of Man by William Shakespeare may know how that circle goes. But if you are like me, you will know that one of the very attractive features of this parish are the families and children. There's not a lot of Anglican parishes these days that can claim to have this demographic in abundance, and we should be very grateful that we do. So the budget projected for the coming year, I've been told, is going to look mostly to maintaining and meeting the needs. There are some growing needs, which I'll talk about. You'll notice there's an asterisk on this line, and they will talk more about that. That's some planning for the future. In 2028, there will be another pilgrimage for the youth of the parish, so some money is being put aside in budgets up until then to do that. We are seeing growth in our youth ministry, our children and youth. The biggest growth is in the nursery, and then at the other end, in the youth. That is where we are seeing more and more young parishioners showing up. And generally, the rest of the Sunday school attenders and the families who come are remaining pretty much the same from year to year, although there was a slight, maybe 10% increase. But with the nursery growing, I'm sure that bulge will pass through for the others as well. So, and I shouldn't mention again, too, the new babies who are expected. So there will be growth. This position also is budgeting to cover for 4 staff missioner positions. The staff, we should be extremely grateful to those who are downstairs while we are up here worshiping as adults and listening to sermons, and those who staff the program and who volunteer as well for the program are to be commended for that work that they do. If it is of any interest to you to volunteer, I know Tracy would love to hear from you. So thank you to everyone involved in this ministry, and I know that it will have your support as it has mine. Thank you.
All right, I am Stephen, as you know, and I'm doing the Buildings and Grounds presentation, or budget line. And this is a ministry that is under Graham's oversight, so it hasn't changed much since last year. As you see, one of the interesting side notes is, with more numbers, is if you were born in 1969, you are 57 this year, which is exactly half of the building's age. So since you know how much maintenance a 57-year-old needs, you know how much this building is. I'll just break it down quickly. The basic expenses takes up roughly a little over half, things like gas and alarm insurance, things like that. The boiler maintenance. The other quarter is personnel for salaries and honoraria, and then the other quarter is for repairs and minor projects around the building. So I think that's all I need to talk about, and I'll let Graham go next. Thanks.
So I'm talking about these two lines right here, the diocesan apportionment, common mission and ministry, and our partnership with St. Thomas Weston. So about the diocesan apportionment, we can think about that sort of in highfalutin terms, that we belong to the body of Christ. And we can also think about it in sort of lowfalutin terms, which is like there is administrative overhead to belong to any institution. And that would be the same if we were a Congregationalist church. If we were a non-denominational that was just one church, we would have more institutional costs in-house. So anyway, I'm not going to tell you whether to think about it in highfalutin or lowfalutin terms. Either way, we have sort of commitments. They have needs at the diocesan level, like what they are doing with that $55,300 is not flying to Grand Cayman every other week. They are, paying toward the pensions of retired clergy and things like that. So the diocese has costs. We contribute to those costs, as does every parish. The diocese, what it requests from each parish is 12% of their annual budget. That number was come to a number of years ago at a synod, and so it was voted on by the diocese as a whole. We do not meet that number, and there are slightly sort of different opinions, contentions about exactly how you calculate what the number is, but we don't actually meet the 12% no matter how you calculate it. So we are contributing about 8% of our annual budget, and we have for a number of years now. And this is one area in the budget that because we're not actually meeting what the diocese is asking for, this is an area that we do a lot of ongoing informal consultation within the parish, as just kind of checking in with people. How are you feeling about this number? And this is one of the harder ones that the budget committee has to really think through every year and needs to hold in tension these various needs and desires and commitments that we have to different things. And so this year, what the budget committee has recommended to Vestry and what Vestry is now proposing to you as the number is $55,300, which is a real increase over last year's, which was $53,000. Real both in the sense that it's actually bigger and real in the sense that it is more than inflation. And it's also not a decrease proportionally. Proportionally, it stays at 8%, so it's just basically flat. And now, in addition to our diocesan apportionment, we also have this last year, we made a we as a congregation made a $10,000 one-time gift to St. Thomas Weston. And there was not exactly a motion, but a comment from the floor. If you want to blame somebody, it was Ben Cressman, made a comment from the floor that we should make this an annual thing moving forward. So that was discussed at Vestry and discussed on the budget committee. We have not made a commitment that this is going to be an annual thing moving forward, but this year we felt that we did in fact have the room to make another one-time $10,000 gift to St. Thomas Weston, so that is represented right there. And then in terms of our other partnerships, $12,000, the lion's share of that, $8,000 goes to Pioneer Camp in our longstanding partnership with them. About $2,000 goes towards the Just Growing program, which is the gardens, which is a joint partnership that we have with Arasha. About $1,000 is spent on just buying like hand warmers and gift cards and things to hand out to poor people who come to the church and ask for things. And and $1,000 goes to the refugee designated fund. And I mean, the refugee committee is very good at raising money, and when there's a family on their way, they raise tens of thousands of dollars, and $1,000 doesn't actually make a huge difference. It's kind of a drop in the bucket. But having said that, symbols matter. And this is a symbolic $1,000, which means that anybody who tithes to this church is supporting the refugee ministry. If you are giving to the general budget, you are giving a little bit to the refugee ministry in doing so. It is a vote of confidence of the parish in the refugee ministry, and a drop in the bucket is better than not. I mean, you need a first drop to add the other drops to, and it's the first drop in the bucket, raising money for whatever family is coming next. So those are the partnership costs.
Okay, two more. Okay, governance and infrastructure. This is led by Heather, and I'll be short here, but it's basically everything behind the scenes that makes the office of this place work. So it's the office supplies, it's phones, it's intranet, it's stationery, the things that a lot of us don't think of, but are required for the day-to-day working of the office. The slight increase in this item is due to some increases in staff and benefits, salaries, but also just a general reflection of the increase in costs year over year. And there was also a request to purchase one new laptop this year, so that is included in that line item. Okay, the last one and the largest item within our budget is staff missioners, and that represents the salaries and the benefits contributions for everyone working at the church more than 20 hours per week. So, to be honest, I feel kind of ridiculous even trying to stand up here and make a pitch about why these people are valuable to the church. They are the life of this place, right? This team leads us in worship. They care for the building and for our children. They guide us through seasons of feasts and through funerals. And they quietly provide pastoral care while many of us do not even realize what's going on. These are the leaders of our church that are tasked with wrestling with our identity, mission, and vision, and translating it into the ministry that we see articulated and led through every other line within this budget. So I think it's safe to say that myself and the budget committee and the vestry who supported this all thinks that we are getting a fantastic deal with the staff missioners that we had, or that we have right now. So this represents, again, the people working more than 20 hours per week. For those staff working less than 20 hours per week, their roles are more tied to specific ministry areas, and if it hasn't been clear at this point yet, those salaries are baked into the ministries that they support directly. So overall, this brings us to a total budget, you can see at the bottom right, of just under $684,000. So a few weeks ago, I sent out a message to our budget committee team to ask them what they thought the story of this year's budget was. What does it mean in a non-spreadsheet format? Chris Banman gave a really great response, so I'm actually just going to quote him at length, and I didn't tell him I was going to do this. So what he said was, I think a strong thread across this year's budget is looking outward while sustaining and strengthening our own ministries. A few examples stands out, he says. For the second year in a row, we are intentionally directing funds to support St. Thomas Weston, which feels like a concrete expression of relationship, solidarity, and shared ministry across the diocese. We are further increasing St. Margaret's contribution to the diocesan common ministry, signaling our growing commitment to the wider church and to ministries we may not see directly, but are nonetheless part of. At the same time, the budget reflects continued and steady support for St. Margaret's own ministries and staff missioners, enabling us to care for our parish community, sustain worship and pastoral life, and remain a place of welcome and local service. Taken together, these choices tell a story of a parish that is growing, rooted, and outward-looking, aiming to steward its resources at home while looking to extend care, generosity, and responsibility to our neighbors and the wider church. So thanks, Chris, for those words. To end, I'll take us back to Graham's sermon series on money from October. In his message was a call to 3 actions, if you remember them, and how it relates to how the Christian and the church is to use its money and its resources. They are that we joyfully spend, that we joyfully share, and that we joyfully give away. If you were like me this last week, scanning across the stories of the AGM report from our ministry leaders, you may have felt something joyful welling up inside of you. I think looking back at those reports gives us a glimpse into what Graham was talking about. So this year's budget, like every year before, is first and foremost a response to the generosity of this parish demonstrated on Consecration Sunday, and second, a plan for how this church looks to participate in the joyful expression of spending, of sharing, and of giving away.
Thank you to the Budget Committee for that thorough presentation. Are there any questions seeking clarity? Yes, Dorothy, please, you have the floor.
Singing for a funeral, you cannot hear up there who's the person who's preaching, or especially when they're giving a homily in a funeral, nor can you hear the prayers of the people. And I know the choir weekly just kind of sits there and prays and hopes they might pick up a couple of words. So my question is there something in the Building and Grounds budget to improve the sound in the chancel?
Sound is one of our big challenges. Well, there's a good example. Sound is one of the big challenges in this church. And just a quick reminder that the church is not built, it was not designed for amplified sound. It's designed for the natural human voice, but we don't actually do that culturally anymore. And as soon as you amplify sound in this space, it reverberates like crazy and it just gets muddy and it's very difficult to hear. And it's hard to get, so it's not just a matter of spending money. Like, we have brought in a number of experts over the past 5 years, and there are people who really know their stuff who say this is very difficult. Like, actually throwing money at this problem will not necessarily solve it. So I just want to register that. We are continuing to work with those experts, and we are trying to make things better for all of the sound needs. There's lots of different sound problems, and we are trying to, so the short answer is that there is nothing that is specifically tagged for that particular purpose, but some of the money that for small projects can be used for the ongoing efforts to improve the sound quality. But I do not want to overpromise, because it's a difficult one that we are continuing to work on.
Okay, for someone who's been in this church for over 50 years, there used to be a speaker in the chancel.
Yeah, that actually is still there, Dorothy, so it might just be a matter of fiddling with it and seeing whether we can turn it up a little bit.
Okay, thanks. While someone else is coming because they want to ask a question, I have another question in the staff missioners. We're proposing a budget this year that's less than what we spent last year.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Do you want to speak to this, Bonnie, or should I?
I'll speak to it.
Okay.
Thank you for noticing that, Dorothy. The reason that it's presented that way is because much of the benefit cost that last year was only captured in the staff missioner line has now been spread out across the program areas. So it looks as though it's less, but in fact it is substantially more. So just to keep you on your toes.
Thank you for that answer. Is there another question, Bill McCann?
Yeah, Bill Can. I'd like to know, it's kind of like two parts, how much money in the budget, and where in the budget, is money for professional development for the staff? And I would actually like to know, of that amount, how much was spent last year?
Great question, Bill. Part of the benefits package includes, I would happily get back to you with the particular numbers in answer to your question. I don't have them on the tip of my fingers right now. Substantial part of the benefits package includes professional development for the lay staff, particularly in things like book or education funds, so things that enable them to take courses or buy books that they are looking for. The clergy, or for myself, the diocese has a continuing education fund for diocesan clergy, and I've availed myself of that fund with Heather's help. And then that's also something that we continue to look at in year by year as ministry leaders, not just staff, but anybody leading a ministry has identified a need for their own development, and we then work with those ministry leaders and with the vestry in order to fund those particular projects or engagements in their own development.
So just kind of off the top of your head, can you tell me approximately how much money was devoted for professional development, but more importantly, how much of it was spent, just as a percentage? I'm not interested in the actual numbers.
You know what, I'm hesitant to make a statement about what the percentage is without actually looking at the numbers, but I could find those numbers for you,
Okay,
certainly.
So this would lead me basically to, I guess, a suggestion for future use. Throughout my career, the thing that made a difference in terms of ingenuity, I guess, for staff and myself was one, a regular program of money set aside for professional development, an organization that made sure that there was professional development opportunities, and they were twofold. One that was organized for all of the leadership at one time, so it's a kind of a leadership focus. But I think more importantly, from my perspective, I want to make sure that vestry is seriously looking at that, and if not, will look at it in the future. And that is, there are 2 or 3 pillars in this church, in my opinion, that lead to growth. Forgive me for naming names, but so Lowell in the music, Tracy and Colton in the youth programs. And I would like to make sure that there is conferences, it may be on a rotational basis once every 3 years. However it's done, I would like to make sure that those kind of provisions are available to nourish the growth of the people that are really forces in the growth of this church. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
Thank you, Bill. I see our treasurer has his hand up. Stu, I'd like to give you the floor. Larry, if you would just forbear for a moment. Stu, go ahead.
This is just to speak, Bill, directly to your question. So we spent about $2,700 on professional development last year. So to $2,700. But of course, there would be a bunch of other areas where it would be leading to professional development, but isn't necessarily getting booked that way. But expenditures that were specifically allocated to professional development was $2,700.
What's the number on books, Stu? Do you know the number on books? We don't need to, you know what, never, we don't need to know. I just want to, could I respond to Bill? I just want to say thank you for that note, Bill, and I think that not only do I agree with you wholeheartedly, particularly about the, our investment, our ongoing investment in the leaders that you have identified in this meeting. I think that is incredibly important. $4,000 on books. So we do a lot of reading is one of the ways that lots of our leaders invest in their own professional development. So thank you.
Thank you for that good discussion. Larry, the floor is yours.
May I ask a general question?
If you can ask any question you want, if it is seeking understanding and clarity, we ask that you hold motions until after it comes to a vote. Yeah.
It's a short homily, okay? The giving of this congregation is a quarter of its potential, okay? And the process, Graham said, under promise, over deliver. We should aim for over promise, over deliver. Asking us as we're not a congregational organization, asking us as congregants to do a reflection, a determination of what we're going to give without leadership, without vision from the leadership, I don't think is a good idea. I think you should say, these are our dreams, put that into your discernment rather than discern and then we'll work with it. So that's my homily. Thank you for listening. I don't think that was a question.
Thank you, Larry. Don, you have the microphone.
Just wondering what the total amount of the mortgage is on the building.
That's 168,910 at the end of the year. That's on the back page of your financial statements.
Thank you, Stu. Okay, Ryan, go ahead.
Just to speak to the professional development thing, that's actually a major thing that the diocese provides, and that's like basically my job. So when you're supporting diocesan ministry, you're supporting things like the annual clergy conference, clergy study days, various lay training workshops around the diocese, all these kinds of things. Now, I appreciate that you want to do extra stuff in parish, but there's multiple lines of professional development that are happening that is reflected in this budget.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thank you, Ryan. Yeah.
Thank you, Ryan. Are there any further questions seeking clarity on the proposed budget? Going once, going twice. Okay, we will close that particular conversation. We are now ready for a recess. We will take a 10-minute break. It is 1:42 by my clock, so we'll come back at 1:52 to reconvene. If you have any new business, please bring it in writing to me during the break. 10 minutes.
No problem. Are there ones out there? Look around.
We're going to end the recess in 1 minute.
This one? No, it's not on.
It is.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now going to reconvene. The recess is over. Please take your seats again. First order of business is we need to set I would entertain a motion to set a time of adjournment. Tom, yes. All right, is there a second? 2:35 p.m., we have a second. Thank you very much. All in favor of setting the time of adjournment at 2:35 p.m., please raise your hands. All opposed? Carried. Very good. 2:35 is our time of adjournment. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to make a change to our agenda, and this will require a motion. What we need to do is change the order of the next two reports. So in your agenda, we have the 2025 financial report, followed by a ministry report from St. Margaret's Montessori. We need to change the order of those reports so that the Montessori report will come first and the financial report will come second. But we need to make a motion to do that because we've already approved the agenda, don't we, Dorothy? Do we have consensus to change the agenda? Aye, give me an aye. Is there anyone opposed? There is no one opposed. We have consensus, then the agenda is changed. And with that, I'd like to invite Liz Curry forward to present about St. Margaret's Montessori School.
There we go. My name's Liz. I'm the director for St. Margaret's Montessori in the basement. So I'm down there Monday to Friday from 8 till 5. You can catch me down there. And in January this year, we celebrated 6 years downstairs, and so I thought it was time to, beyond time, to come and say thank you to this parish for hosting us. And when Bonnie was speaking in the opening remarks, 2 words caught my ear. One was capacious, and the other was hosting. And Bonnie, I don't know if you know, but the first name that I tried to pitch for this center downstairs was the Capacious Cup Montessori Center. So that really stood out to me when she said that. And the other word, of course, is host. We are just so grateful for all of the support, for your prayers, for your thoughts, for the financial contributions that come from this parish to support the Child Care Center in the basement. We are thriving downstairs. We have a wait list of about 170 people. Yep. So we're on the lookout for other rental space in the neighborhood. So if you see anything, feel free to send us an email and let us know. But yeah, we're thriving down there. We've hosted about 20 children from this parish through the last 6 years. We've had about 15 board members filter through the years as well. And we've had about 10 staff that have come from this parish directly. So there are huge ties between this parish and St. Margaret's Montessori, which makes sense because we are your namesake. So yeah, so things are wonderful. And let me just see if I had anything else to say. Yeah, no, I think the relationship is really wonderful. And I just want to say thank you. There's a staff team down here Monday to Friday of 7 to 10 people if you include the substitutes. So you're also supporting the staff that are down there doing their careers and working down there. So it's really wonderful, and we really appreciate especially Tracy for the number of times that I text her and say, you know, whatever we need, or we're missing this, or something's happened. So thank you, Tracy, for fielding all those calls. Dawn Betts for helping me navigate the website a couple weeks ago, and everybody here for just wishing us well and providing support. Yeah.
Thank you, Liz. We received that report for information and delighted to be partnering with St. Margaret's Montessori. We now pass the floor on to Stu Taylor, our treasurer, to present the 2025 financial statements.
All right, thank you, Clint. I'm conscious of the time here. Dorothy, I don't know if we need a motion for the end of my presentation, at what time that will end, but I'll be as quick as I can be here. You know, it's funny, you think about what you're going to present, and then through the first half, I started just hearing all of these echoes of some of the themes that I was wanting to touch on. And one of those is that this is very much a team sport. We look at the finances. I get to be up here presenting the finances, but there's a fantastic team here that is managing that. So I really want to start with thanks, particularly to Heather Epp, our bookkeeper, who really is the backbone of this whole system. This has been a remarkably stable year, which has made things just really nice in terms of the reports just moving along, and it allows us to just focus on systems improvement and on analysis and making sure that we've got our heads correct about our finances. So thank you to Heather, to Tracy, to Ali, Kristen, and the Teller team, and Graham and Bonnie and their engagement in the finances. There's obviously a broader group as well, but with that kind of core team, you've got a really, really strong group here managing the finances. Go to the first slide here. Oh, thank you, Graham. Do you mind being Tinkerbell? Yeah. Okay, great. And the other thing about team is that, you know, it's interesting when you're doing finances, there's ways in which you're kind of thinking like a business, and there's ways in which we do need to think like a business. But there's also some very important ways in which we are not running a business. And so as I put up this picture here, which is our giving over the last 10 years, I'm very conscious I'm not presenting sales to our shareholders. You are not shareholders. I would suggest we are all careholders in this church. And so as we look at this is not something, you know, that a team has gone out and done. They've made the sales. This is something that we collectively, in faith, are doing as a community, and it's a reflection of this community. So I'd like you to read this chart in that vein. Very quickly, the height of the total bars there is our total giving, and that breaks down into the blue, which is our general giving. That's the giving toward the budget. And the green is designated giving. So those are the gifts coming in for those specific projects that we do along. The green kind of ebbs and flows as we have different projects, like we're doing a floor, for example. We raise money for that, then that goes into the green. But the blue, you can see pretty steady growth. You know, we had this slight, and this kind of is another way of looking actually at the numbers that Graham put up earlier. Kind of a slight plateau in sort of 21, 22. But then starting in 2023, we had growth of $70,000, then $30,000, then this past year, $20,000 in our annual giving, for total growth in our general giving of $120,000 annually since 2022. So that's pretty incredible growth at a time when a lot of other communities are really struggling. Not a lot of churches, I think, in the city would reflect this kind of picture over the last 10 years, and certainly in the last 6 years since COVID. So there's a note in your financial statements not to turn the page from this before offering up just a prayer of gratitude for God's faithfulness and the faithfulness of this congregation, and I would echo that before we turn the page on this slide. So thanks be to God. The one other piece that I would also point out is that this past year, for the first time, we are now together, again, as careholders collectively, stewarding a budget, including our undesignated and our designated, that is now over $750,000. Okay, next slide. So you have these reports in your booklet. This is the report that just shows the kind of breakdown by ministry area. And I did just want to also touch on, I think Johanna also pointed to the asterisk around children and youth, spiritual formation, and partnerships. Here we're just reporting the amounts that were actually expended during the year. And so the children and youth, $40,521, does not include, there was another $4,000 that was put aside for Camino 2028. And likewise with the refugee ministry is in partnerships, and so there was another $1,000 on top of that $20,669 that was put into the designated fund for refugees. And you may notice, those of you, the eagle-eyed viewers, if you go down here, you say, oh, wait a second, that annual budget and actual there doesn't actually reflect what is in our booklet. Well, if we go to the next slide, so we take all of those kind of expenses for the year of $628,283, and then we have our mortgage interest payments, which is about $6,700, and our mortgage principal, which was just over $24,000. And then we have that $1,000 to the refugee ministry and the $4,000 transferred to the Camino Fund for another $5,000. That brings us to $664,351. So that was how the cash from the year that came in through general giving was allocated. Let me go to the next slide. So in the next slide, you can see, again, that figure at the top, the $645,890, our general offerings. We have a few other sources of income. There's a small grant that we receive each year. There's the rental income from the Montessori school. We have some interest income. And so the total there is $661,349. And so that is the figure when you look in your budget for 2026. We have a total budget of $683. And so that is a growth of about $22,000 from what our actual revenue was in 2025. And of course, our main source of any growth in revenue is coming from that general giving. Okay, move to, yeah, that's fine. So in addition to that, the $4,000 that was the allocation of children and youth budget, and the refugee sponsorship $1,000, which was coming out of lines that we had approved in the general budget. There was also a decision by Vestry early in the year to take $20,000 from our general fund and allocate that into the Camino. And so that was moved out. So we had $25,000 that was taken from the general fund in 2025 and moved into designated funds. We go to the next slide. So speaking of designated funds, that's the most fun schedule in the whole thing. It's a lot of numbers to look at. And so I wanted to just look at one particular designated fund, which hopefully helps you understand how to read that schedule. So this is the Camino, which is one of many designated funds that we have in that schedule. And the way that funds get into our designated funds is by two ways. One is that somebody makes a donation and it's specifically allocated to that fund. They say, I want to make a donation to the Camino Fund. Those are restricted funds. We are obligated to use those funds for that purpose. The other way that they get in is through a transfer. So where Vestry says, we're making a decision internally to take some funds from our general fund and move it over into the Camino Fund. There, we're not obligated. We can just as easily make a decision later to say, oh, we didn't spend those funds, let's move it out, use it for something else. So it's treated a little bit differently. So Graham, if we can hit the button there. We've got a couple of things. So our opening balance for all of our designated funds in 2025 was just under $195,000, of which we were actually in a negative right then for the Camino because we had spent a whole bunch of money having to purchase tickets and things like that in advance. We didn't yet have all of those funds raised. We go to the next one, Graham. And again, yeah. And so at the end of the year, then you can see the closing balance for all of our funds. We were holding 229,000, just over 229,000 in funds that were designated. And in the Camino Fund itself, that was 5,817 is kind of the current balance. So how did we get to that? Do another double click there, Graham. Okay, well, maybe I'll explain how we got to that, then I'll talk about that. Okay. So we start with an opening balance for the year. We receive a certain amount in funds that are coming in specifically designated to that fund. We disperse funds, so we dispersed 28,758. But then we also had 24,000 that was transferred in. Those are those funds that we have decision-making over. And so the closing balance is 5,817. But the restricted is where we take all of those funds that were given that we are obligated to use for that purpose. How many of those remain at the end of the year that we're still obligated to use for that purpose? And right now that's actually 0 in the Camino Fund because the remaining 5,817 is coming out of that 24 that was transferred in. So when we look at that then, at the end of the year we have overall 229,467 in funds that are designated for a specific purpose. Of that, just over 201,547 is those sort of restricted funds, those kind of funds that were obligated because they were given for that purpose. Okay, Graham? Yeah, that's fine. We can just keep going. Yeah. And so when we look at kind of the change in our funds, we've got 3 things on here. The blue is our general fund. And the good news story here is that you can see prior to, like, coming into 2020, I remember Kimber, who was our treasurer at the time, really ringing the bell and saying, you know, if we added up all those designated funds that we need to spend on, and then you look at sort of our operating, we're actually borrowing from our designated funds right now to fund our general operations. So our general fund is actually in the red. And so early in the 2020s, we were able to come out of that, and over the last number of years have been operating with our general fund in the black, which is great. So it means that we are operating with enough funds to fund our ongoing operations, and if we needed to spend out all of those designated funds, the 200-odd thousand in your schedule, we are able to do that. So that's a healthy financial position for us to be in. And then the gray just shows you the gradual paying down of our mortgage. And as is in the report, the mortgage is just ended the year just around 169,000, and it comes up a year from now in January. We're currently in a 3.74% mortgage, sorry, 3.74% APR, and that term's ending January 2027. So this coming year we'll be looking at what we're doing with our mortgage going forward. And so finally, you can see here our general fund is sitting at just under 14,000. Graham, if you push that button. Because we have some of those funds that we moved over to designated, but they're not actually obligated, our actual unrestricted funds is more like $42,000. So again, that's got us in a fairly healthy situation financially. So lots to give thanks for in this financial report. Lots of good news. And continuing to mean that we're in a position where we're able to look forward with hope, with expectation, and looking to discern what we do as a team and as care holders for this church. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thanks to our treasurer for that great and thorough review. So what we need to do now is I need to receive a motion to receive this report and all the reports that are printed in the secular, and then once that's moved and seconded, we can open up to questions at that point. So is there a motion? Dorothy, yes? Why is that? I think my way will work. We will take the financial questions first, but we can't really have questions until we have the motion. We might as well do it all together. So let's do it that way. I think it makes more sense. So I will entertain a motion to receive the reports as in the circular. Amy, is there a second? Oh, okay. Yeah, Harold is a second. All right, before we do that, let's have a discussion. So first we'll begin with the financial reports. Are there any questions regarding the financial reports? Yes.
I have a number. Okay, so the first is, are there any funds that specifically come in from the church that relate to the market? Or from the market? And if so, what is the amount?
Like the funds?
The farmer market, not the stock
Wolseley Farmers Market? They have made a donation to St. Margaret's for the past 2 years, but do you mean a fund related to our contribution to the market or funds from the market?
Income.
Yeah, they've given in for the last 2 years, I think. Yep. Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no rent.
Not rent.
I think we're logging that as a donation.
Yeah, a donation. Yeah.
Is it tracked in the financial statements anywhere how much the various budget lines cover on behalf of other organizations that use our space, such as the Market of the Montessori? I'm talking about utility bills mainly.
No, we don't currently track that.
Then I would suggest that, seeing as I would propose a significant portion of our utility expenditures, not gas, but hydro and water, are as a result of these partnerships that, and as the cost for those utility bills continually increase per unit of use, that we might look at increasing the rent on the Montessori by a factor of approximately the rate of inflation year to year to cover these increases. Otherwise, if the Montessori budget, the Montessori income remains the same, that effectively means that there's less and less money available from the general fund to find other mission apportionments that are not, if we're not increasing that. But that's just a note for discussion.
Is that something we want to discuss now? That's kind of to be noted.
I think that's a good, it would seem like you would, maybe is this a suggestion you'd like to refer to the vestry?
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Okay, then thank you for that comment, and that suggestion will be taken under advisement and referred to vestry. Are there any other questions related to the financial report? Going once, going twice. Okay, we'll open up to any of the other reports that were in the circular. Any questions or comments related to those? Going once, going twice. All right, so we have a motion to approve the reports, including the 2025 financial report as circulated. It has been moved and seconded. All in favor of approving these reports, please raise your hand. All opposed, please raise your hand. Is carried. Thank you very much. We come now to the budget, which we discussed before the break. We are now preparing ourselves to vote for the 2026 budget. I would welcome a motion to approve the budget as proposed. Caleb will make that. Yes, very appropriate. And is there a seconder? Oh, Rick in the very back. Yeah, good. Okay, discussion. Any would like to make any debate on the budget at this point? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Okay, debate is closed. All in favor of approving the budget as proposed, please raise your hand. All opposed? All right, carried. Budget is carried. We come now on our agenda to other business. No other business was handed to the chair during the break, so there'll be nothing to address here. It's now my pleasure to announce the results of the election for Synod delegates. And I will read these results alphabetically. Delegates to Synod will be Tracy Curl, Pam Friesen, David Newsom, Nathan Rempel. Alternates read alphabetically will be Chris Banman, Colton Koval, Shelley Mall, Jana Neufeld. Let's give them all a round of applause. I believe we come now to closing, and so with that, I'd like to pass the microphone to Bonnie for closing remarks.
I just want to take this opportunity once again to make sure that you have Shrove Tuesday and Ash Wednesday in your calendars. Shrove Tuesday dinner, the pancake supper will begin at 5 p.m. This year we have a partnership both between St. Margaret's and Manitoba Pioneer Camp and the Green Carrot. Raw Carrot, shoot. It's a great organization. I encourage you to go and look, but first come here and taste and see what they are creating as a community. And then on Ash Wednesday, we'll have a service with children in mind at 4:30. 4? Shoot, I didn't prepare these remarks. 4 p.m., Tracy Curl will be preaching, and then at 7:30 p.m., we'll have our principal Ash Wednesday service. The festival choir will be singing, and Graham McFarland will be preaching.
Great. So since we've already set a time of adjournment at 2:35 p.m. and we're a little bit ahead of that, seeing that there's no further business on our agenda, I would like to declare the meeting adjourned and invite Lowell to lead us in a closing hymn of worship.